What's up, my fellow fiends? This is Nim here, back with more RPG horror stories. Today we're going to be looking over 3 stories. 2 short ones and then a long one. They're going to be interesting, so let's go ahead and look at those posts. Hello. I just wanted to share this recent story. My friend, let's call him Mark, wanted me to join his D&D game. I showed up with a human divination wizard who was a fortune teller in training, starting at level 2. I was told no because I don't want you to be useless, you can play as her in the next campaign. Me and the DM got into an argument over my next concept, a Protector Azamar Warlock. He claimed that by being a Warlock, I used dark magic and needed to play the Fallen subrace. I argued my patron is of good nature, so I'm not committing any evil by working with them. But he was insistent, claiming if I made a paladin who tortured souls forever, they would become an oathbreaker. What you're proposing is like a demon using angel magic. I apologized to Mark and left the campaign. I just can't play in a group that restricts my choices like that. I never saw that DM again, and the only member of the table I saw after that argument was Mark himself. I ask of you, am I the a-hole? I await your judgment. So, my judgment? No, you're not an a-hole. Clearly, their playstyle is not going to mess with your playstyle, and you did the smart thing by just, distancing yourself from the situation. It wasn't like you were very close to anyone besides Mark, and you still seem to, have connections with those people. I can't see how you doing anything like that would have been you being the a-hole, and most of the comments seem to agree. They're all of the general assumption that, no, you didn't do anything wrong by leaving a campaign you weren't going to have fun in. On the side note of Protector Azamar Warlock not being able to be good, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. There are Celestial Warlocks as a subclass in 5th edition. They're literally meant to be good warlocks. They serve celestial, lawful, good beings. I could see this argument maybe if you decided to go with a Fiend Pack Warlock, but you make no mention of being a Fiend Pack Warlock, so why would he just assume that you'd be doing evil dark magic? That's ridiculous. Anyway, on to the next one. There was this campaign I was in with a terrible DM. I ended up leaving his game. I was playing a College of Lore bard and was going up against some difficult enemies. We were level 3 in a group of 3. We were going up against creatures with 80 movement speed, 2d8 multi-attack, 33 hit points, and 15 AC. That's pretty tough even for level 3, yeah. I tried to use cutting words on as many as possible. Then I was on 3 HP and an enemy attacked me, hitting my exact AC. I had given him cutting words though. I was worried at first, but then I realized, oh, I can use cutting words and it's a guaranteed miss, I said. No, you can't, the DM replied. Confused, I asked why. He said that despite it being an animal and me looking at the area it's coming from, I don't see it. I protest but begrudgingly move on. It deals 8 damage. But wait, cutting words can also subtract from damage, so if I get lucky and roll a 6, then I can live. I brought it up again and the DM said, you don't see them. I protested because if it's at the point when the creature has hit me, then I must see it, but no, I somehow don't. So I have to make death saving throws, I fail all 3, and I end up dying because he wouldn't let me use the abilities of my own class. One other player died that session, and the last player was left on 1 HP. And after the game, when we brought this up, he claimed we just needed to suck it up, and that us dying was our fault and not his or his poorly balanced encounters. And this is just the beginning. There was so much more BS I had to endure before I decided to leave. Wow. I can definitely see why you left. I would have absolutely hated that. You can't see something that's hitting you. Really? Really, you can't see something that is clearly hitting you right now? Is it invisible? Are you blinded? No? Then I'm pretty sure you can see it. I understand maybe making the rule of before it hit you, you couldn't see it, so you couldn't do cutting words on the attack, but you're clearly aware of a thing that is right up in your face dealing damage to you. Honestly, it sounds like he just wanted you to die. Maybe he's one of those DMs who really enjoys killing off player characters. Well, On to our last story for the day. Throwaway, in case the accused comes across this. One of our players has main character syndrome. It's getting increasingly frustrating to deal with this guy, and our DM is too new to really properly recognize and deal with it, which isn't his fault, but it's kind of terrible. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of our little group, which is an exciting benchmark, but naturally as time goes on, we only become more and more aware of each other's habits and flaws. Naturally, our group isn't perfect, but I think most of us have done a great job so far speaking up about our concerns and adapting to feedback. One such player, the youngest of us, still has a lot she can improve on, but has shown a lot of growth over the last few months, while another, who is admittedly the reason our group came together in the first place, seems to have no self-awareness about how their playstyle is negatively affecting the group. They have major main character syndrome. It's recently become more of a concern as our current campaign draws to a close, with only a handful of sessions left. The player recently adopted a secondary character, a DM-assigned NPC turned PC, putting their first on the back burner for a bit as other two players have done before, just for funsies. However, this new character, we'll call him Sam, caters to all the worst parts of main character syndrome. Sam has a tragic past involving outliving his entire family as a plot-related magical accident has left him immortal. Because of this past, he never gets involved with what the rest of us are doing. We want to help decorate the town for a special holiday. He refuses and goes off alone to sulk, all the while baiting us to get us to follow him and dig into why. We all have a slumber party. He goes to bed early and listens to his dead kid's music box all night, every night, all the while baiting us to eavesdrop and dig into why. Of course, our DM naturally gravitates towards these emotional solo scenes, always giving in to the player's desire for attention, no matter what the rest of us are doing. Just last session, 4 out of the 5 of us, plus a major NPC, decided to hang out together and have some fun after a harrowing plot-related experience of losing our memories of each other, but we got exactly 0 screen time for this interaction in favor of Mr. Sam McSadpants. What makes it worse is that Sam is directly related to the big bad evil guy of the campaign. They're immortal brothers with literal hundreds of years of history together, which means that even though this guy has only been in our party for 3 or 4 sessions, less than a week in-game, and even though the rest of us have spent the last couple months building up a rapport with Big Bad Evil Guy, absolutely none of this matters, since Sam has a connection that no one will ever be able to contest with. Any scene between the party and the Big Bad Evil Guy becomes a personal scene between Sam and the Big Bad Evil Guy that the rest of us can't contribute to. Not only this, but the solo scene from last session comes along and reveals that another major NPC, from my character's backstory no less, literally my best friend who I came up with special for my character, is also directly related to Sam. And my character wasn't involved in this reveal at all, nor was it ever brought to their attention. So that was fun. Besides this, there have been many instances, both with Sam and the primary character, where Sam's player has interrupted an ongoing scene another PC is having with a stupid quip, usually related to how he has no place in the conversation. For example, PC Sonia will be talking to her best friend NPC Kendra about this dude Jake who asked us to get some pancakes for him. This happened before Sam joined the party, so Sam interrupts with a joke about how he doesn't know what anyone's talking about. Who the heck is Jake? What's a pancake? Haha, aren't I funny? Pay attention to me. It's annoying, frustrating, and incredibly rude. Kindly, shut the heck up and leave the talking to the people who actually know what's going on so we can progress the plot. Maybe you can ask questions later and bond with the other players? No? You want to wander off and sulk about your tragic backstory again? F you too, I guess. This kind of monopoly over the story was pretty okay for me at first, as we started with a smaller group than we have now, and I was a new player and generally not comfortable yet with leading the narrative. But now that we have more players, and I have become much more confident in my abilities, Sam's player has not given up any of the floor, which brings me to yet another issue. Sam has no connection to any other PC, and makes no effort to make connections, even after the issue has been brought to their attention. He has more personal connections with NPCs he's just met, including NPCs that already have personal connections to other PCs, as evidenced by the scene last session, than he does with the party he's been traveling with for a week. Sam, and honestly Sam's player, only ever talks about himself. It sucks. My newest concern now, as this campaign draws to a close, is the new campaign coming up. Our DM is still in the very early planning stages with only a general idea of the setting's theme and starting hook. As we all have been thinking about our next characters over the past few weeks, Sam's player has been by far the most ambitious. Most of us have come up with general ideas for the basis of a character, race/class, while our DM finds his footing in the new setting. But Sam's player has almost entirely fleshed out the new character, we'll call her Rose, complete with many of their own world-building ideas. One of these ideas just happens to be the fact that Rose is horribly cursed, and if she dies, a terrifying, continent-destroying evil will be released. Naturally, her character motivation will be breaking this curse, but even before our DM has planned anything concrete, it's so glaringly obvious that protecting Rose will need to take precedent over almost anything else the party does. This isn't how D&D should work. The player is a perfectly nice person with some excellent improv and roleplay skills. They always are. But God, is it going to be hard to keep playing with them if we can't get them to care about other PCs? How do you even confront someone about this? I'm almost dreading this new campaign. Edit. I am not the only player who feels this way, and the issue has been brought to the attention of both the player and the DM at least once before, though pretty gently, as the player did lose a close family member to COVID recently. As our DM is still pretty new, he's still adapting to dealing with a player like this, so expectations weren't high to begin with. The other players and I have successfully shut down several interruption attempts in the last few sessions, but it's honestly a pretty exhausting way to play, constantly having to be on our toes because of this other guy. Obviously, after the introduction of Sam, there's not much the DM could have done about retconning the brother of the big bad evil guy part, but rest assured, me and these other players are planning to speak with both of them more directly about the details surrounding Rose before the new campaign begins. Honestly, speaking with them probably is the best thing that you can do. I know that you've already brought up this problem with them at least once, but especially since it was done very gently, and the person does seem to be a nice person outside of game, it seems like this could be something that you could just solve with talking it out among your friends. Maybe agreeing to give them a gentle reminder, be like, hey, you're butting in again a lot, do you think you could not do that? Just something out of character to remind them. Because a lot of the time, if you start out being the face of the party, if you start out leading the narrative, it can be hard to step back. And while it is true that Sam is definitely a main character syndrome character, the player doesn't really seem to have anything malicious behind their actions. Now, I don't know this person, I could be wrong, but it really just seems like maybe a misunderstanding or a clash between different playstyles. Perhaps Sam's player is just more interested in the gloomy, emotional parts of play than they are in the more fun, relaxed parts of play, both of which are important in D&D. This is a mistake that I can see the DM making, especially a newer DM. It's very easy to fall into that trap of dark and sad equals good story. At least this doesn't really seem to be like something that will break up their group in the long run, as long as they can talk it out like civilized people. Anyway, I've been Nim, and this has been another episode of RPG Horror Stories. I'll see all of y'all next week. Bye-bye!